Someone asked on Reddit, what is the scariest thing that has ever happened to you? Which story is more creepy for you? Express your opinion in the comments. Store 1.
What woke me up wasn't just a dream anymore. This happened about 12 years ago. I was living on the first floor of a two-story building with all kinds of weird, ghostly things. My crazy landlord had bought a lot of random junk at estate sales and stuff like that, and he was collecting it in the basement. I never went in because it gave me the creeps. I think it's fucking haunted because of all the dead people's junk, but that's my best story. I lived here by myself for a year until my boyfriend moved out. We had no pets and no kids. I told him a few stories, and he was skeptical at best. We shared a king-size bed but had separate covers. I had recurring nightmares, maybe about a 2-year-old boy with blonde bowl-cut hair, denim overalls but no shirt underneath and no shoes. He would stand on my side of the bed and look at me, watching me sleep. I would wake up in a panic, and he would disappear. One night, I fell asleep with my feet out of the covers. My boyfriend was sleeping next to me. I feel a very slight pressure on my left big toe where it meets the rest of my foot. I was awake but completely freaked out. It lasted a few minutes and stopped. Eventually, I fell asleep again. The next month, this happened a few more times, here and there on different feet. I didn't tell my boyfriend. I was worried he might laugh at me or think I was crazy. The next time, it lasted exactly 15 minutes, and I didn't dare to look down and see what was holding my foot. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Hey, please let go of my foot." And gradually, the pressure went away and I fell asleep again. I plucked up the courage and told my boyfriend the next day. He didn't laugh or call me crazy. He shrugged and said, "Okay, I know about your nightmares and something is happening. Wake me up next time you have one and I'll look down for you." Okay, great. So, for a week or two, my feet didn't touch the ground. I hope it's over. No. I felt it again. I touched my boyfriend and he opened his eyes. He was awake. He grabbed my foot. Looked down at me? My boyfriend nodded, but he didn't look down. He just looked at me and whispered, "I feel it too. And I'm not looking." From that day on, he believed me when crazy things happened in that apartment. By the way, we have been married for 10 years.
Store 2.
What I saw that night was something I would never want to see again in my life. This happened when I was in high school in southern Michigan, probably in 2003 to 2004. I had spent the evening with my girlfriend at her house and was driving home late, between 11 p.m. and midnight. My car was low on gas and the gas station in the nearby village was already closed, so I decided to take a little detour to the 24 truck stop along the highway to fill up. Usually I would take the rural direct route from the village to my parents' house, but it was easier to take an alternate route from this truck stop, so I decided to do that. It was a pitch black night, probably a new moon, or very cloudy. I was driving on this rural road and approaching a T-junction, indicated by a big yellow giveaway sign on the right side of the road. People see these road signs every day, so everyone has a pretty good idea of how big and tall they are. It's about 1 meter wide and 7 to 8 feet off the ground. As I approached the sign, just out of range of my headlights, I saw a large, low, dark shape moving quickly from left to right. Naturally, I slowed down, as I was used to seeing deer on the road, but it soon became clear that this was an animal I had never seen before. When it reached the right side of the road, it stood up and stood on its hind legs just in front of the yield sign, almost completely blocking it. It was covered in such dark jet black fur that I couldn't make out any details except its broad shoulders and thoughtful pale eyes. I can safely say that I left there as much like the wind as possible. Anyway, I hope I never see it again. I get goosebumps even when I remember the incident, and I really try not to think about it when I have to leave my car to open the gate at the end of the driveway at my parents' house, or sometimes late in the evening when I have to help look after the horses.
Story 3.
That heavy painting flew towards my head as if someone had thrown it. 15 years ago, I worked in a restaurant in a very old building that shared a courtyard with a courthouse and had a public gallows in the 19th century. The last public hanging was in 1834. When I started working there, some of the waiters told me that the place was haunted and that they experienced strange phenomena like chairs and tables being moved when they left the room. I was always skeptical, so I never took them too seriously. I had the key to the place, and I would be the first one there in the late morning, preparing everything myself until everyone arrived in the afternoon. The restaurant occupied 3 floors of the building, the dining room and kitchen on the main floor, the bar and the owner's office upstairs, and storage in the basement. One day I was in the kitchen. I had arrived there about an hour earlier, and I was the only person there. I heard a door close and someone in the bar moving around upstairs. The creaky old hardwood floors, very quiet when you were there by yourself, so it was obvious that someone was moving there. The owner sometimes slept in his office when he slept late, so I figured he must have spent the night here and just got up. I went upstairs and the place was empty. I looked at the bar and the office, called the owner's name, nothing. Silence. I was always skeptical, but I was so sure that I heard someone walking there that I was actually a little scared. I went back into the kitchen, listened to see if there were any other noises, and I didn't hear anything. I was still feeling a little weird. Then I heard what sounded like someone moving downstairs, so I started going down. On the wall of the staircase, probably about 2 meters square, there's a big oil painting with a really heavy steel frame. It's a samurai warlord or something like that, sitting on a throne, wearing a staff and a mask that looks like a skull, painted by the owner's grandfather who died in a house fire years ago. When I was halfway up the stairs, I heard a crack, and this painting, which must have weighed 40 or 50 pounds, came flying right over my head, lodged in the corner of the wall next to me, and I looked into the warlord's eyes. I went up the stairs, out the front door, and waited for my coworkers to arrive so I could tell them I believed in ghost stories.
Story 4.
I can't say that it's completely inexplicable because since reaching adulthood, I've realized that I've had sleep paralysis since I was a child, and the possible explanation for what happened is directly linked to that, but it was still absolutely terrifying. I was 13 years old at the time, and I was living with my mom and stepdad in their 250-year-old house. I fell asleep in the basement, but to be clear, it's not what you imagine. Although their basement was spooky, it had a couple of big couches and a big TV, definitely a recreation room. I woke up in the middle of the night and I couldn't move at all. My whole body was frozen except my eyes, which were flying around like crazy. Again, I know this is standard sleep paralysis, and I know it has happened to me more times in my life than I can count. But here it became much, much worse than usual. Their house was an old townhouse in the city. It was narrow and very long, stretching backwards. So I was on the couch in the middle of the night, completely frozen and unable to move, which was scary enough and terribly uncomfortable. And then the hallway towards the back of the house was very dark because my mom had turned off the hallway light. I could barely make out the back stairs, and I saw a figure walking towards me, a middle-aged woman at most, walking slowly towards me. Her face was hidden by shadows, and I could only make out very light linen pants and a blouse. The next thing I remember, I felt hands squeezing my throat and choking me. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think, I couldn't move, I couldn't scream out loud, but inside my head I felt like I'd been screaming for an hour. Suddenly I could feel my limbs again and I jumped on the couch. Not 5 seconds later, I was running upstairs towards my bedroom, too scared to look back. I never went back to that basement by myself until I was an adult, and even then, it always creeped me out.
Story 5.
His mom was at work all day, so who was that thing? This story is the story of a childhood friend of mine who told it to me, and it still haunts me to this day. He was really scared, and even his family supported his claims. In fact, my friend and his family moved into this rental house that my friend said was haunted. It gave everyone a bad feeling. Those who visited or stayed talked about it. And I had a strange sense of foreboding every time I went there, and the consensus was that the house was haunted. There was an oppressive feeling in the house, to be honest, and you felt this miserable dread that was hard to put into words and extremely uncomfortable to experience, to say the least. Anyway, this unexplained event, which is the basis of this article, was enough for my friend's family to pack up and move in with relatives until they could move permanently. On this fateful afternoon, my friend came home from the park and heard an argument in the kitchen between her parents. My friend thought this was strange because both his parents must have been at work, so he called out "Mom" before opening the front door and going inside. My friend said the house instantly became quiet, an uncanny silence like all the air had been sucked out, and it felt suffocating and wrong. Then her mom said, "Hey, my friend's name. We're here now." My friend was just outside the closed kitchen door at this point and froze before opening the door. It was his mother's voice, but there was something strange about it, like the rhythm was missing, which made it his mother. It was a flat and unnatural voice. My friend decided to run out the front door and wait outside until his brother came home. But when he got home, he said he saw his mother looking at him through the living room window. But it wasn't her mother. The face was the same. Everything was the same. But there was nothing in her face that made her mother. There was no expression of recognition on her mother's face, no indication that she was looking directly, no emotion in her expression, nothing. The eyes looked empty and expressionless. My friend screamed and ran to her mother's workplace and confirmed that she had been there the whole time and had never come home. At first, my friend's mother thought that someone must have broken in, but further investigation proved that nothing had been stolen and that the back door and front door were locked when my friend arrived home. No one could explain who my friend saw in the window and why she looked so much like her mother, but not exactly human. So that was the factor that influenced her decision to leave immediately and find another place to live. The owner of the house denied that anything like this had happened when they lived there, but admitted that tenants did not stay for long, saying that something was wrong with the house. My friend also said that he was the only one who saw something definitely ominous in the house, but his family definitely felt an evil presence there, which led to the doppelganger experience my friend had. Totally frightening.
Story 6.
It was as if I was being called from miles away, unstoppable. This is going to sound like bullshit, and I don't understand it, but I promise you, this actually happened to me. A couple of years ago, I moved to northern Wisconsin for the summer. I had a good job, I had some friends there, and the summers are beautiful. Anyway, one of my favorite things to do was to get in the car and hit the road. Any direction, it didn't matter. I just wanted to see the beauty of the land, and I was never disappointed. One day, I started driving randomly again, but this time I thought I should go south on Sanborn Street. It just seemed like the thing to do. But actually, it wasn't that unusual because I was routinely going down Sanborn. I just had a stronger feeling that this time I really needed to go that way. I drove a few miles until I got to the White River Dam, and there's a little parking lot there for canoeists and kayakers. I thought, I really want to park there. I really do. So I pulled the car over, got out, and looked around. I was filled with the urge to walk along the edge of the lake above the dam. I realized that whatever I was heading towards, it was there. I am now completely disoriented and a little scared about where I am going, but I feel a push that takes me forward. I keep going. The edge of the lake is not a hard line between solid land and water. There is a significant swampy area, and my feet started to get a little wet as I splashed through the water, but I knew I was close. I wasn't sure where close, but I knew it was close. I came to a small bend in the path I was following. When I looked, I realized that whatever it was on the other side. Before I continue, I need to tell you something about the feeling I had. I don't know if I was the only one who experienced it, but when I was younger and quite sexually inexperienced, if there was a possibility of something important happening with a girl, I would experience a unique feeling of excitement and nervousness combined with the feeling of doing something that could get me in trouble. Maybe I was the only one who experienced it, maybe I wasn't, but that was the feeling I had at the time. I was very clearly following something that was manipulating that part of my brain, and when I used to have that feeling, I usually liked it because it meant that something good was going to happen in the near future. But now, walking through a swamp after feeling like something was calling me there from miles away, I was scared. But still, I thought I should at least see where this feeling would take me. I turned the corner and I thought, this is it. I looked and there was a thick magazine on the floor. I bent down and opened it, and there was only sexual stuff in it. I picked it up, flipped through a page or two, and then I looked to see if there was anything else, and that's when I realized that the feeling of being pushed had disappeared. In fact, all the feelings I'd had since I started driving had disappeared. I was just standing in the North Woods with this magazine in my hand. Part of the magazine was submerged in water, and there was mud on it, so I left it there and drove home. I know this sounds like a joke story, but I could have sworn it was something that happened to me. I had never experienced the feeling of being pushed before, and I never have again.
Story 7.
I wasn't sure if my sister standing at the end of the corridor was the same sister at that moment. When I was 9 years old, it was late at night. I was sleeping in my room, and my little sister was sleeping in the hallway in her room. It's not unusual for us to run to each other's room when we have a nightmare, trying to escape the demons. Just run and jump into the other's bed. Tonight I literally woke up from a deep sleep. It was dark, the moon was high outside my window, and my sister was standing outside my door. There's no arguing that it was her height, her stupid haircut, her big New Kids on the Block t-shirt nightgown from my mom's youth. But he was just standing there, one hand on the doorknob, the other on the doorframe, looking at me. He was silent. I stared at him for a minute, and then, a little annoyed, I opened my blanket. "Come here if you come here." He doesn't move. He doesn't say anything. He's still staring. And at this point, I'm not even startled. I'm just angry, sleepy, and white trash, so I get up and go to hit him. I jump out and go hard to where he is and stand in front of him at arm's length, still silent, still staring. Now I'm a bit startled. "What are you doing?" And I hit him from above. My hand disappears as it falls, as if it doesn't dissipate into nothingness, as if it's gone straight. I look back at my bed. I look down the hall. Nothing. So now I run down the hall to his room because that time has come. Nightmare time. Get in her bed and fight! And when I got there, I realized she was there, but she was vigorously vibrating. Forget it, she had a seizure. So I set off the full alarm, ran to my mom and dad's room, turned on all the lights, yelled that my sister was having a seizure. We went to the emergency room and she was diagnosed with childhood epilepsy. I also didn't even know what a seizure was when I started yelling about it, which was weird. To be honest, even today I think she was astral traveling or something. She found a way to come and catch me because she was in trouble in bed.
Story 8.
Not paranormal, but creepy as hell. I was in high school and I was still living in our family home in Queensland, Australia. My family was going away for the weekend, and the house had been broken into the previous week, so I was still a bit shaken up, and I specifically asked my brother to stay at our house that weekend. Of course, on Saturday night around 11 o'clock, I got a text from him saying that he was going to stay with friends. So I threw myself into bed a bit creeped out, and I was expecting someone to break down the door at any moment. It took me a long time to fall asleep, but I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I knew, I was woken up by a very loud noise. It took me a few minutes to realize that it was music, and that it was our stereo system that was on at full volume around 3 a.m. I can't understand why it's on when I know I'm home alone. I know my brother won't come home and turn the stereo on, so I start to panic thinking that someone came in and turned it on to scare me. I wander around my bed in the dark, desperately trying to find my phone, and then I realize that for the first time in my life, I didn't take my cell phone into the bedroom that night, and I can imagine it sitting on the kitchen counter where I left it. At this point, my adrenaline must have spiked because for some unknown reason, I decide to just do it. I quickly open my door and shout my brother's name, hoping that either he will answer me or that the intruder will think there is more than one person in the house and go to hell from there. There is no reaction, but then it starts to get quiet because the music is turned down, but it goes on and off for a while. I go out into the hallway and then around the corner into the living room and turn on the light, hoping to see someone, but there is no one there. I should mention here that our house is 3 stories, so the rest of the house is dark, and there are about 1,000,000 places where someone could hide. I start to take a few steps towards the living room, and I wonder if I should run to the bathroom to lock myself in, or if I should go downstairs past the kitchen, grab my phone, and go to hell from there. Just as I'm about to run, I hear the stereo volume drop to a very low level, and I force myself to look around the corner. I have to look twice at what I'm seeing, thinking I'm imagining it. A gecko fell from the ceiling and landed on the stereo, and the impact of the landing turned the stereo on. The volume and on-off switches were positioned at the top, and the gecko was running on the stereo, probably startled by the noise, so it was turning the volume on and off. I think it took me about an hour to calm down after that, and I walked around every room in the house until I was able to force myself to go to sleep around 5 a.m. To this day, I have never slept without someone in my house. That damn gecko stole my sleeping innocence from me.
If you have a story you would like to share, please share it with us in the comments. Also, subscribe to my channel for more Reddit stories like this. And don't forget to turn on notifications. Take care, friends.